Good morning. It is 11 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, one of my favorite times of the week. Welcome to the Real Dope podcast, the show where we dive into everything that you want to discuss, everything you need to know, and every question that you've got about loving, supporting, and quite frankly, just having to deal with an addict. I'm hanging out here with my sister, Beth Brand.
And Ellie just walked in. She's very excited. The dog. She heard you. She's like, "Yay! Time for the podcast."
There's something going on.
Yeah.
Well, as I always like to remind you, we are not therapists. We are not doctors. We are just people like you who have gone through the impact and the toll it takes on loving, supporting, and having to deal with an addict. Super excited about today's show because we're going to talk about something that I don't think is talked about enough in the world of addiction, and that is its impact on the generations, which is really what this show is about. It's about the people that love and support addicts. It's not about the addict, but this goes so far beyond you, the person who is dealing most closely with it. And today we want to talk about that impact and, more importantly, tell you what you can do about it.
Welcome to The Real Dope, a podcast for anyone walking alongside someone battling addiction, based on the powerful book, The Real Dope on Dealing with an Addict, by sisters Elizabeth Brand and Meridith Powell. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share authentic stories, and provide the honest guidance. Let's begin today's journey and turn survival into strength.
Let's do that. Let's turn survival into strength. So where does today's podcast subject come from? Why did we want to discuss that? Well, because I think it really is rooted in our story. In our book, The Real Dope, we open up with both of our stories, which is so interesting. It's the perspective of how addiction impacted us. Now, I'm 4 years younger than Beth, and Beth was a lot closer in years to both of my brothers. And they sort of had one family unit, and I was kind of another family unit. And the addiction experience for us, that had some similarities, but in a lot of ways it was very different too, because it was a lot more prevalent in my life at the beginning than it was in Beth's. It both took the toll at the end. But I think one of the most interesting things is that addiction started long before the four of us ever entered my parents' lives. Both my mother and my father had addiction pretty steeped in both of their lives. But we come from, even though one of our backgrounds is Catholicism, we come from pretty waspy backgrounds, pretty World War II, World War I generation, where you just sucked it up and took whatever life dealt you. You didn't complain about it. You didn't try to change it. And certainly you never, ever talked about it. So for us, the journey really begins with my grandfather on my father's side being quite sick with everything from mental illness to alcohol addiction, to who really ever knows which one comes first. And my grandmother asked my father to come home and take care of her and to take care of my grandfather, not to leave her alone in that house. Now, both my father and my mother tried to fight that and wanted my grandmother to come and live with them, but she would have none of it. She wouldn't leave my grandfather, our grandfather, alone.
No, you just didn't do that. You didn't.
You just didn't do that in that day. And so there's no such thing as a boundary and no such thing as putting the enabler first. And so my father went home to take care of his parents. At that moment, my mother was not happy. She was very upset. She didn't want to live in Uniontown. She certainly didn't want to have to deal with our grandfather, but she never said anything and he never said anything. And long story short, where it goes is because my parents just did what they were supposed to do, because our grandmother just did what she was supposed to do. And on the other side, our grandmother on my mother's side was basically doing the same thing. She and her husband took care of all the addicts in their life. And nobody ever talked about it. Nobody ever said that what was going on wasn't normal behavior. I mean, even if they wanted to take care of the addicts in our lives, every time we as children thought something was wrong or thought something was off, we were always told no. We were always told that was not what we were seeing. So it's like a textbook. I mean, Our father descended into alcoholism. Our mother descended into becoming an unbelievable enabler. And we picked up the traits of our parents just as they had picked them up.
Yeah, so many people say to us, how did the boys become alcoholics and the girls become enablers? And they used to make me go out like, I don't know, like that's really weird. And then I thought, no, it's not weird, because they were following their grandfather and father, and we were following our mother. We were doing our mother's patterns. So
Yeah.
it made sense. And to defend our paternal grandfather, who was just a very mean person, who knows what happened to him? Who knows what his parents were like? Who knows how far back all this goes?
Right.
You know, how many generations? That's just the way it was, and it's not questioned.
Yeah. I mean, on our paternal, on our maternal grandfather's side, I mean, he was the eldest of like seven kids. And his father was all over the place, either made a lot of money or they were completely broke. And he basically had to rise up and become the leader in that family. And consequently,
he had to become the parent when he was a child. He had to keep everything good. So
he had brothers who were alcoholics, and he took care of them. He took care of their families. And that just became a very normal part of everybody's life. I will say both of our parents must have dealt with a lot of it in their childhood, because they made it very clear that we would not be close to our extended family.
That's true.
That was true. I mean, they really, that was the one generational boundary that they put into place. But where are we going with this? What's the point of it? The point of it is, even if you as the enabler are not going to do anything to change your life, and there's no judgment on that. I always say to people, you know, whatever people would say to me, do you wish you'd separated from your husband before you were 36 years old? And the truth is, no, I did it at the time that was right for me. I did it at the time when I felt like I was making the right decision. So what we want you to take from this show, though, is if you aren't talking about it, if you aren't helping the people around you logically understand what is going on, they are going to repeat the behavior.
And you don't even have to stop the behavior as long as you point out your behavior and that it's not the greatest.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that whole World War II generation, which is our parents, is they put themselves on pedestals. And they did this not because they needed to be king and queen, but because they wanted to keep us safe. I mean, you have to think about, our grandparents lived through World War I. Our parents came along during the Depression. Then everyone had World War II. And then, you know, it was a lot. And so they're just trying to keep everyone safe and happy. And so if our parents presented themselves, as many parents of that generation did, that they were in control and everything was fine and that we were safe. And that wasn't true. And if our mother had just said, look, you know, I'm an enabler, which she did not know at all. But if she had been that aware, and hopefully from watching these videos, you are that aware that you have a problem, that there's a problem here, or you probably wouldn't be watching this at all, then it's the least you can do is make sure that your children and others around you know that you understand that this is not healthy behavior, that you can't stop it yet, or you don't know what to do next, or you're unsure, but you know that this is not what you want for them, and it's not healthy, and it's not healthy behavior.
You know, I think the thing that is so difficult about understanding it, is that every instinct in you wants to protect your child or protect your siblings. And you want to do the things that are going to make them feel safe. So naturally, if you are living in a home where you have no idea what's going to happen with the addict, you don't know if Friday is going to be a good night, it's going to be a bad night. You don't know if there's going to be enough money to pay the bills or not enough money. You feel like it would be wrong to share those things or to share your vulnerability, because the child is looking to you to protect you. I mean, for you to protect them. But the irony is, I don't believe we communicate to our loved ones very much through our words at all. Mm-hmm. They pick it up through our actions. They pick it up through our energy. They just, even if they're not self-aware that they're picking that up. You know, a million years ago, I don't even know if this show is still on television, but it was a show on the History Channel called Biography. And I was laying in bed on one Saturday sick, and I don't even remember this woman's name, but most people will remember the case. She was the woman who was a teacher who fell in love with her student, and they had an affair, and she got fired, and they ended up
Oh
having like
yeah, I
3 or 4
can't remember her
kids
name.
together. It
Yeah,
was Mary something. But
Mary,
anyway,
Mary Kay, something. I don't know.
yeah. But anyway, the story was about her and the biography was about her. And what was really interesting was that when she was a young girl, she was from a very prominent family in Virginia. Her father was a politician. And when she was a young girl, about 16 years old, her father had had an affair with a teenage girl, an underage girl, and he had gotten the girl pregnant. Now you imagine it all got kind of put under wraps. Her father did have to get out of politics, but the family unit stayed together. I she, Nobody knew what happened to the young girl and to the baby. But the point is, I don't know, but I would guess in her family nobody ever discussed that. Nobody ever talked about it. And she grew up to repeat the same behavior. I think my sister and I married addicts to understand our mother. Because at the end, for me, I didn't understand why my mother was staying. I didn't understand why she was subjecting. In fact, she and I talked about it a lot. And she would say, where do I go? What do I do? I don't have options, which was not true.
So it's
But
interesting because of where you are in the line, and then I'm 4 years older. When I asked her those same questions, like I was as a teenager, she would say to me, I made a promise, I made a promise, I made a promise. And that's something I said in my own mind when I was trying to decide what to do with Edward. I felt very responsible to my promise.
Interesting.
You know,
Interesting. Yeah. So it impacts you. And I think I couldn't understand why my mother wouldn't leave and why.
because you were really seeing some bad stuff, which I never saw because I was already away at high school.
Yeah, yeah. You were gone, I was home, and by that time, Daddy was in really bad shape, and he was very volatile, and so cruel to her.
Yeah.
It was just, it was
Which
really, really,
his father was to Grammy.
yeah.
I mean, just so cruel. He would make us walk everywhere. He wouldn't drive us anywhere. And I don't know if Grammy drove or not, but anyway. And then,
No, she did not. She did not drive.
Okay. And then he called her bad names
Yeah,
all the time.
and so it's
Funny.
yeah, and so it's just interesting that, and so I think I married an addict, and I married a man a lot like my father. He was very kind. He was very, very sweet. He was very smart. He was very funny. Um, but I think I did that to understand my mother, because after walking through that relationship, I do understand why you don't leave. I do. It's not as easy. Everybody's just like,
Yeah.
change your life. It's just not that easy. It's complicated.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have children.
And the other thing is, even when you are sharing this with children, my advice, even though I'm not a counselor, not a doctor, I only have my own experience, you just make sure that it's really age appropriate. All I'm saying is don't lie to them. You don't have to lay it all. If they're 7, you're not going to lay it all out of everything that's going on or complain about yourself, because it is still your responsibility to take care of that child and make them safe. But don't act also, if they see something going on that's wrong, don't act like it's okay. As our one friend said, I kept telling everyone the sky is blue and they kept telling me the sky is green.
Right.
Just because that's really confusing for a kid.
Very, very confusing for a kid. So Beth, I think was something that would be really helpful, because I think honestly, the best thing you've ever done in your life, and you've done a lot of amazing things, but I think the best thing you've done is how you helped your son understand the situation.
Well, I think it was a little bit easier for us in that besides our grandfather, nobody in our I don't know, our brothers kind of, but nobody in my immediate orbit was a tyrant as far as the alcoholism and things were concerned. So these were people, your husband, Doug, mine, Edward, our father. These are people I actually loved and cared about and saw the better angels in. I saw the real them before the addiction took over. And so from that perspective, it was easy but I was going to be honest. Our parents were never honest with us. Our mother was certainly not honest. And I also think because I had I didn't have a financial cushion like our mother had. I didn't have, like, I couldn't fake it. And I didn't have the wherewithal to keep Edward going and then keep a household for us going. And so I had to be more honest. And I didn't want to be lied to. But I was the canary in the coal mine of our family too. I was the one who was always singing and saying, I think something's wrong. I think, Dad has a problem. I mean, he's packing beer at 7:00 to drive me 3 hours to high school. And he's like, packing beer because he can't go from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and drop me off at school and then, go back home without a beer. So those kind of things. But I was told I was crazy all the time. And that's the kind of thing that goes from generation to generation to generation. All that learned behavior. You do become your parents. That's all you know when you start off.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing how, until somebody talks about it, how deep it is in you. Like, so right now, if you have an addict in your life and you're constantly putting your goals, your dreams, your desires on the back burner to take care of the addict, every young person around you is learning that is the way to do that. And it doesn't matter what you say to them. It doesn't matter, what you desire for them. It is the action that they will talk. And I think what you did so well is really helped, when this was never done for us, was help your son understand the difference between whether his father loved him and supported him, and what it meant to be sick. That those two were, I don't know how to explain it, but they weren't like they weren't. It didn't have to be one or the other. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't a choice. Like, somebody can still be an addict and having this erratic behavior, like not showing up for you, not being there for you, getting an hour's visitation with you. And my God, they can't even stay sober for a freaking hour. Helping them to define that and separate it from the fact that did not mean that person didn't love you. Because I remember saying to my father, I remember sitting in the kitchen begging him not to drink. And he just said,
oh, you froze. You're still frozen.
Yeah. What about now? Yeah.
No, now you're back.
He said, I don't know what you're worried about. You're going to be fine financially. And
wow. What does that say about him? What he thought about himself? That's so sad.
It's so sad. But it's like, I just took that as a symbol that he didn't love me.
Of course you did. Of course you did. You're just a kid and you don't know any better. But when Edward was in therapy, we had a therapist explain to me, and I always thought this was good, that what you're asking him to do is not breathe. You're asking him not to breathe, and then he'll be okay. When you ask him not to take drugs.
Yeah.
And he can't fathom that. They can't see it. Like, the drugs are the most important. That's how they're staying alive in their own minds. And to ask him not to do that. So yeah, he's always going to put you last, or not last, but not above the drugs. The drugs are always going to come first.
Yeah. But isn't it funny that I grew up and I prioritize making money over everything. I mean, it's a constant fight in my life. It's a constant, every urge in me just wants to go to work and make money and put everything and everybody else on the back burner. And it's interesting, but that was the message I got as a kid, that was the most important thing. Yeah. So that's why you've got to
get that message.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I said,
I wish I cared more, but I don't. Yeah. I should. I wish I did.
But I think too, if you're struggling with children with addiction, or young people that you love in your life with addiction, where are they getting that? Like, really start to think, like, has this been, you may not be able to do anything to save that addict, but what can you do to save the people around them?
Let's go back to to our own parents. What if our grandmother, actually our father's mother, had said, look, your dad's out of control. He's been out of control a while. You and your brother are gone. What if I do come live with you in New York? Would that be okay? Just think how different our whole lives would have been. Our mother would not have been angry at our father for most of, I mean, she wasn't angry. They loved each other, but she wasn't happy with the choice he made.
Right.
And and then we would have been raised in another place, and our parents would have shown us that helping the addict like that wasn't helpful. And standing up for yourself, that's the biggest thing I have. I have no idea how to stand up for myself and be me, because I never saw that. I mean, that's something that I've learned to do through therapy, and I'm still not very good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
If our father didn't stand up for herself, or mother, she could have said, well, Ed, go to Uniontown, take care of your mom. I'm not having children there, and I'm not going there.
And the whole time that her mother was alive, she could have gone home. She could have moved us to, she could have drawn a boundary with our father and done that. But I also think a reason, like what we're asking the audience to do today and having these conversations, is it's hard. It's really hard. Like it is hard to admit to the people that you love that there's real failure. You also feel like you're outing or betraying the addict. Like if I tell people that, they love you to the best that they can, there's a disease in there. Absolutely. They wrecked the car last night. Absolutely. They hadn't been to work in 3 days. We're struggling financially and I need to go get another job in order to help us because of this. You feel like you're betraying the addict. You feel like you're betraying that. But I also think you need to understand that you need to deal with the situation in the present. And if it ever changes in the future, then, you can correct it there. But the people around you are not stupid. They know what is happening. But if you don't make them conscious of it, they'll repeat the behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what's your biggest takeaway from today's episode?
Well, it's something that both of us have thought about quite a bit, trying to make sense of our own lives. And my biggest thing is just to be honest. That's what it all comes down to. Anyway, stop, living a lie.
Yeah, I would say that my biggest takeaway is to really understand that you are kidding yourself, that you think you are creating a scenario where everybody doesn't already know what is going on. So it isn't betrayal. It isn't outing somebody, because you're just stating the reality. And I think lying would be okay if it helped anybody, but it doesn't help a single person. It doesn't make the addict healthier. It certainly ruins the lives of the generations around, because I think you said that so well. Had our father just stood up to his father, all of our lives.
Or just not giving in to the enabling. He wasn't helping anyone. He hurt everyone. He hurt a whole nother generation. So even if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your children.
Yeah.
I really do think I left Edward because I did not want Cabell raised in that environment. I just couldn't. I couldn't do that. And if I don't know, sometimes I always say, Cabell, like my son showed me the way. Like he was always showing me the way, because he made me be a better person than I was normally. Because if it had just been me, I would have suffered through it. I know I would have. Yeah. I would have felt responsible and suffered through it. But when I had to choose between our son and Edward, I had to choose our son.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good piece of advice too, is that if you're struggling with this, focus on, like, really understand, like, I believe our mother believed she was helping us. But what we want to reveal in this show is that she was not, because we didn't talk about it. It was textbook. My father died when I was 21. 30 days later, in walked my husband into my life. And I think about like all the men I met when I was 21 years old, but the one I was attracted to was the one that was exactly the story I was already living, because I hadn't learned my lesson yet. And I needed to play that out. And even when the signs were there were real trouble. My mother still wasn't honest with me at that point. She still wasn't. She didn't learn enough from her own life to warn me. Because right now, when people tell me that they're with somebody in recovery, and I'm always like, how long have you been together? And if it's in the first 30 days to a year of the relationship, I'm like, run like hell, because this is hard enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm just always, whatever people do, but I'm always very, very, very honest. And yeah, and I just think that's really, really important. So any thoughts on what you want to talk about next week?
Why? Do you already have an idea?
Well, I have a couple of ideas. I'll just share a couple and
Okay,
let's
you
pick
go.
one.
Okay.
I want to talk about what you need to do to protect your own sanity. I mean, I think living with addicts makes you crazy.
It makes you crazy.
It makes you crazy. And I think you actively need to work on protecting your own mental health and protecting
Truthfully,
your
living
sanity.
with enablers makes you crazy.
Yeah, it does too. That does too.
It's the same thing. That is the biggest thing I think I've learned through all this is we are just as sick. We are just as sick as an addict.
Just as sick and
Mhm.
just as crazy.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, we can talk about that. Another topic we can talk about later is I want to just go a little deeper on what we talked about today and just go like how do we get here? Like what do we get out of being enablers? What makes what
Oh,
brings
I
our
love that.
bell? You
All
know?
right, so that's the next two shows. We'll talk about how to protect your own sanity, and then the harsh reality of the juice you get from being an enabler.
Yeah.
All right. I hope you take some good notes from today's session. I hope this podcast is helping you. We'll see you right back here 11 a.m. Eastern for another episode of The Real Dope. Talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.